It was a relationship that we met like this, so as a courtesy we decided to join a $100,000 fund. It's not a huge amount, but he was thrilled that he sold the fund to me. After having coffee at a nearby cafe, we headed to JP Morgan's headquarters together. I've taken pictures in front of the building before, but this is the first time I've been inside. We will guide you upwards. No. I will wait here. Yes. Then I'll come right down with the paperwork. I asked him to keep the fact that I was here a secret. Takeu looked around and said, "This is JP Morgan's headquarters. The correct name is JP Morgan Chase Bank. It is a large financial group with investment banks, IBs, and commercial banks, CBs. Its position in the global financial industry is right after Golden Gate, and it has a branch in Korea." Taejae said, "I'm not feeling well, so I'll go to the bathroom." Huh. I sat in the lobby and watched the people passing by. They all seemed like elites because they were working in the center of global finance. A strong sense of pride was evident on his face. How much money do you move per day here? And how many people will cry and laugh because of it? Unlike domestic securities companies that are like frogs in a well, the power of global IB is beyond imagination. It is not a matter of making an individual stock soar or plummet with a single report. That's possible for me too. That's why my power in the financial market has grown. As the saying goes, the butterfly effect, a small action can lead to big results. Even more so if you are an influential person. If it wasn't for me, Barnes Willis wouldn't be alive right now. Looking at it that way, I may have changed the history of this world significantly without my knowledge. And will it continue to change in the future? Alone, I was drenched in emotions, but I felt a sense of popularity from the other side. Looking up, she saw a woman standing in front of her. He didn't look like he was a teenager, and he looks a little younger than me. About 20 or 2 years old. She had blonde hair that fell down to her waist, a small, pure white face, a tall nose and red lips and large, clear eyes. She wore a yellow dress, and her limbs, which showed that she doesn't usually see sunlight, are so clean and pure white. It was not suitable for this place. That would be the same for me too, he said, looking at me. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Kong Jin-Hoo. Even if you're wearing a hat, you can recognize it at a glance." I said hello. "Good morning. I'm used to talking to someone for the first time pretending to be friendly." He smiled and said, "It's strange. I've heard that she's in Manhattan, but seeing her here. Is it just a coincidence?" I asked her. "Is it not a coincidence?" She naturally sat across from me. Nothing in the world just happens. There is always a reason for everything. Sophistication and dignity were felt in the British accent and gestures. Bodyguards in black suits were standing within reach if they reached out their hands. "Are you a rich, well-bred girl?" No, it was too oppressive to say that. "Do you feel like royalty?" Even more surprising is the appearance. It was like looking at an elaborately crafted wax figure. She boasted an unrealistic and perfect beauty that much. Appearance is an important factor in being liked. "I thought we would meet someday, but I didn't know it would be today. I've heard rumors about you for a long time." "What rumors?" "The L6 explosion, Brexit, the US presidential election, and even the big one. I thought I would fail once, but I succeeded in everything. And this time they found a spy chip and caused the US-China trade war. I always wanted to ask you when we met, how the hell was that possible?" I answered calmly. "Let's just say I was lucky. If that's luck, then the goddess of fortune is with you. I hope." She smiled faintly. "I like lucky people. Luck is something you can't buy no matter how much money you give. Perhaps the value of a person like you is not in the money you have, but in your luck. Or there is something else that goes beyond that luck." With that said, I looked straight at my opponent. She did not avoid the gaze. She was joking, but her words were getting to the point. "I came here not because of money, but because of my foresight. If it wasn't for that, I would have just lived a very normal life. You may have graduated from college by now and got a job in the financial sector, or you may have remained as a job-preparing student. However, the foreknowledge that emerged that day changed a lot. Takeu kept the Vant coin and we became world-class rich. And Ronald became president, and America was prepared for a major earthquake. You have changed a lot. But the biggest change is you. Who would have imagined that a young Korean who had no possessions would rise to this position?" Emerald green eyes gleamed. Those eyes seemed to look down on me and naturally forced me to tell the truth. "What kind of life would you lead to have this kind of atmosphere?" "Well, I don't know. No matter who my opponent is, there's no reason for me to be shy. There is nothing to be sad about. What do you want to say? I just want to know about you. Who you are, what you like, and what you will do in the future. Does this mean you have a crush on me? She thinks she should decline that she has a lover, but she stands up. I will see you again soon. Until then, good luck. A while. As I jumped up and stepped forward, the bodyguards behind me moved immediately. At that moment she raised her hand and they stopped moving. If you've talked like this, isn't it polite to introduce yourself? She smiled curiously at my question. By the way, you didn't tell me my name. I am Grace Rothschild. The answer was that. She went out the front door and got into the Rolls-Royce Phantom waiting in front of her. I stood there and watched the car door close and the car start. What the hell is this? Jin Ho Kong thought. I was startled by the sudden narration. Madam. It's a surprise. When did you come? Just now. Taekyu, who was approaching me, suddenly asked. Who is that woman? This time it was this guy's turn to surprise. When I told him his name, Taekyu opened his mouth wide. Ugh. Rothschild. That's a famous chaebol family. Do you know? Of course. Does anyone know that? Surprisingly, he is an otaku who is keen on history. It often appears as a black screen in manga and anime, so why don't you know? Wouldn't it be a Rothschild for a conspiracy theory? Was that the reason? The Rothschilds are a family of Jewish financial conglomerates. It has been passed down for 250 years, and as a family that once dominated the financial world in Europe, it is also a name that will always come up when you study history and economy. It is known that he still possesses enormous wealth even in the present, which has greatly reduced his influence unlike in the past. Other chaebols that hold shares in listed companies disclose their assets transparently, but the Rothschilds are so secretive that it is not known exactly how much they have. There's even a saying that it's the fifth view. That's bullshit. After a story is told once in a book, it is transmitted as if it were a fact. After 1,000 trillion, the first is the first sutra. Even 1,000,001 is more than the sum of all the assets of the 100 richest people in the world. And if it's 5,001, it's bigger than Korea's Kospi and Kostak combined. It is impossible to have such an undisclosed asset, even if you have hundreds of billions of dollars. Of course, that alone is shocking. Is there anything comparable to the Rothschilds in the royal family of Saud or the royal family of Abu Dhabi? But why did she come here? I must have come to work. It is said that J.P. Morgan founder John Pierpont Morgan was funded by the Rothschild family. For some reason, Rothschild and J.P. Morgan still have a deep relationship. After all, is that woman a member of the Rothschild family? With that in mind, Taekyu tapped my shoulder and said, Come to Ellie. I was taken aback by that. Huh. What did I do? Taekyu wiggled his fingers. Remember, my friend. Pretty girls are dangerous. So she only sees 2D girls? What does it mean to see you again anyway? After the 3-day US-China summit, the two leaders announced the results. First, both sides decided to stop the escalation. The US withheld tariffs on the remaining $250 billion of Chinese exports, and China also withheld additional tariffs it was intended to impose on US agricultural and livestock products. In addition, soybeans and corn will immediately resume imports. This is partly what I expected. But the core is high-tech industry and intellectual property rights. So far, China has limited foreign ownership of all industries to 50%. However, in high-tech industries such as IT and telecommunications, the number can be increased to 70%. In addition, it has decided to abolish the regulation on the share of electric vehicles altogether. Read more at wuxiax.com. For Keris, the road was open to enter China without setting up a joint venture. They also agreed to phase out tariffs on automobiles and high-tech products and reduce the U.S. trade deficit with China by increasing imports of U.S. energy and agricultural and livestock products. The two leaders announced the agreement in front of the media. Ronald said with his characteristic exaggerated gesture. President Zhang is a very nice person, and China is America's most important trading partner. Our conversation was very enjoyable. Zhang Pinghua also said, China will continue its reform and opening up policy and further open the market door. Openness and cooperation are important drivers of international economic and trade. China's steps toward the human community will not stop. I received a call from Hyunju Nuna. For now, the trade war is a breathtaking atmosphere. I thought I'd hit it with a big river, but it's an unexpected result. In fact, Zhang Pinghua has taken a hard line on the trade war all along. He went so far as to say, in the West if you get hit on the left cheek the right cheek will also be given away, but in China if you get hit on the left cheek you will be struck back immediately. Therefore, most experts were negative about the possibility of a settlement. I expected to refrain from escalation, but I thought it would take several months or more to solve the high-tech industry and intellectual property problems. Although detailed negotiations are still pending, the negotiations have been concluded. This was possible because the Chinese side made major concessions. Regarding the various events that have occurred so far, the line was drawn as a problem for individual companies, but the companies acted on their own as the Chinese government had set a policy. Weihua and TZE agreed to be investigated by the US government, take corrective action for violations and compensate for violations. In addition, it was decided to establish a compliance monitoring team composed of US personnel at the headquarters. They have the right to investigate when intellectual property infringement occurs. This included Zhou Cha, who admitted that Carlos took over technology. The world was relieved when the news of the conclusion of the negotiations spread, and the stock market rose sharply. How did you know it was going to end? I just thought it wouldn't be long. Before that, I had a feeling that it would be the case, and after meeting President Zhang Pinghua, that thought became more firm. I feel he wanted to close this matter as soon as possible. Experts chose the US midterm elections as another variable. However, after the big one, it declined again, but Ronald's approval rating was still close to 70%. There was little reason to escalate the trade dispute until then, given that Republican control of the House and Senate was certain during the midterm elections. Anyway, I made money again thanks to you. Golden Gate and K Company, which bet on the rise in advance, made quite savory profits. As I hung up the phone inside, another phone rang. It was none other than Zhang Pinghua. He is leaving for Jakarta for a meeting with ASEAN leaders. It must be to persuade allies. President Zhang Pinghua spoke to me through an interpreter. China's economy is not a small pond but a big sea. There are many days of strong winds and blizzards in the big sea. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a big sea. During my stay in New York, I received requests for lectures from various universities. State University of New York, Columbia University, Harvard University, MIT, etc. In particular, MIT was so active that the president directly sent a long email. After visiting Caltech, the reason was that I had to visit MIT as well. Are you saying that this is not a reason? Some places offered the bait of an honorary degree, but they all turned it down. Because there is nothing to say about going there. There must be only people smarter than me, so what are you going to talk about? Isn't it a bit too much for a Harvard degree? Yes, it is an honorary degree. I hope to get an MBA later. I should have graduated from Korea University before that. After the US-China trade war was over and Eli's work was over, we decided to return to Korea. I was going to leave quietly, but there was already a huge crowd at the airport. It was not enough that Ronald advertised the neighborhood through Twitter, so he came to see him off. Even in New York, Ronald's popularity skyrocketed. It is unbelievable that the approval rating had reached the bottom before Big One. Ronald patted my shoulder and said, "It's a pity you're already leaving. I will come to play again. Haha, there's going to be a summit meeting with the Korean president soon, so let's see then." The crowd clapped and I smiled and waved. That's how popular I am. I was embarrassed and difficult to keep doing this, so I quickly went into the departure hall. Taekyu, who had been waiting in the first place, looked at me and said, "I thought he was a Hollywood star." While the plane flew across the North Pacific, I devoted myself to reading after a long time. The title of the book is The Rothschild Family Secret. However, as I read, about half of the content is the author's imagination or estimation. That's because there are so many unknowns. The world is full of all kinds of conspiracy theories. The most famous conspiracy theory in the financial world is the theory behind Jewish capital. Jews control the global economy and politics by controlling the Federal Reserve Bank, Fed, and the Federal Reserve Board, FRB. To this end, the Bretton Woods system was used to make the dollar a key currency, and then pressure was put to abolish gold convertibility. Of course, this is literally a conspiracy theory. The reason these conspiracy theories gain power is that the phenomenon can be simply explained. Various phenomena occurring in the financial world are complexly intertwined with various causes and interests. However, there is no need to explain this in difficult economic terms, and it can be neatly summarized in one word: It is a conspiracy of Jewish capital. However, if such a conspiracy theory has no basis, it is not. It is a fact that Jews entered the financial industry early and exercised influence with huge capital. There are several reasons for this. First of all, Jews were immigrants, so they moved frequently. For this reason, they preferred cash and precious metals that can be taken with them rather than real estate that is difficult to dispose of. In the past, Christianity forbade usury. It was considered a sin for Christians to lend money to each other and to receive interest. However, because the Jews were outside the canon law, they could borrow money with a ring. However, this loan business is a job that has a poor image. It can be seen as a good thing to lend money to someone in need of money, but the original human mind is different when entering the bathroom and when leaving the bathroom. When I borrow money, I borrow it with a lot of money, but when I pay it back later, I get upset. It is fortunate if you pay it back on time, but it is not uncommon for circumstances to fail to pay it back. But you can't play money while taking care of your personal circumstances. All kinds of vicious and violent methods are used to forcefully take money from a person who has not been able to pay it back. As a result, Jews have gained the image of a vicious capitalist who has no blood or tears and only reveals money. In Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice, there is a Jewish moneylender named Shylock. He tried to cut off a pound of flesh close to the heart when the protagonist couldn't repay the borrowed money, although he failed and was reverse-toured. This can be said to be the view of the Jews from the Europeans at the time. These negative images were accumulated and used as a logic to justify the Holocaust during World War II. Anyway, to this day, Jews still have enormous capital, and based on that, they exercise enormous influence on American politics, economy, and finance. And at the center of it is the Rothschild family. Even though it is difficult for a dynasty to continue for more than 100 years, it is a wonder in itself that a family has maintained wealth and power for more than 250 years. In the past, the Rothschilds had so much power that they ruled Europe. But not now. Since then, the world economy has grown at a tremendous rate and wealth has increased accordingly. Of course, the Rothschilds may also have increased their wealth, but the overall proportion is bound to decrease. Although there are many conclusions, is it not enough to worry about? I remembered Grace Rothschild, whom I met at J.P. Morgan's headquarters. He seemed to know me well. Well, you don't have to worry about it. What are you doing? When she turned her head, Ellie was approaching her. It's the Rothschild family secret. Fun. It's not much fun. I'm just curious how much the Rothschilds are worth. Ellie glanced at the book for a moment. Does Jinhu want to make more money? Is it possible? It's money I won't be able to use until I die anyway, so what else should I do to earn more? I just do what I want to do. I don't really care what other people say about being the richest person in the world. Ellie tilted her head. Still, there is no end to people's desires. I smiled bitterly. It is. The reality is that no matter how much money you have, you struggle to get more. Namsan Salon Hotel Member Lounge. Only members with membership can enter this place. The Salon Hotel membership was priced at 80 million won. As expensive as it is, there are many benefits. You can freely use the fitness center, outdoor swimming pool, golf driving range, sauna, and member lounge, and you can also make a reservation for the golf course owned by the Salon Hotel. The fitness center of a luxury hotel is not just an exercise facility, but a social space for the wealthy. Members formed friendships and shared various information. A meeting of business housewives was also held here. The ages ranged from middle-aged women to newly married new daughters in their 20s. Youngja Park, wife of Chungwon Group chairman Hwang Jae-hoon. Chungwon Group, which was founded in the 1980s, has grown through the construction of residential apartments and offices. Even when many mid-sized construction companies collapsed due to the IMF and the financial crisis, they rather grew in size through mergers and acquisitions. Thanks to this, he has now risen to 22nd in the financial rankings. When Park Youngja entered the lounge, she said that the 5 women who had been there got up all at once. Is your mother here? You worked hard to come. Why are you all awake? Come on, sit down. The rank among housewives is usually determined by the social position of the husband. Park Youngja was practically the leader of this group. They drank coffee and talked about various rumors floating around in the business world. Then after Kongjin, the story came out. I heard that you came back to Korea a few days ago. You can move the American administration with just one word. I was surprised to see that. When did OTK company become so big? When I first heard it, I just laughed, but now I am standing shoulder to shoulder with the Seosong group. There was talk that it would turn around soon. Oh, so will OTK company become the number one in the business world? Once the talk after the earthquake came out, I didn't know it would end. Even when OTK company was stamped and sanctioned by the Chinese government, it was thought that it would have no choice but to surrender to China. However, Kang Jin-Hu moved the U.S. administration to solve this situation. And she got Zhou Cha to admit to the technology hijacking and received an apology and compensation. This is something no other company has ever done. Zhang Jadi was once again shocked by this incident. Politicians always want to make sure that political power is above market power. However, Jin-Hu Kang did not bow his head easily to politicians, and therefore neither the Liberal People's Party nor the ruling New Politics Party did not like it very much. But now no one dared to touch it. That is why Kang Jin-Hu's status was great. These points are important, but there is another reason why they pay attention to Jin-Hu Kang. That is, he is only in his mid-20s and is single. This meant that there was a possibility of forming an in-law with him through marriage. Who will Jin-Hu Kang marry? She said that politicians and judges with daughters are all paying attention, she said. Who doesn't? A middle-aged woman said to Park Young-ja as if she were flattering. By the way, isn't Eugene graduating from high school this year? Jin-Hu Kang is now in his 20s, so I think the two would get along well. Why don't we get to meet you once? Park Young-ja has 2 daughters. The second of them, Hwang Eugene, was so outstanding that her beauty was so well known in the political and financial circles. She is most famous as a beauty in the business world, but she is a member of the CL group, but Eugene Hwang is no less than that. Asterisk because our Eugene is younger than young Hannah. She has an elegant and calm impression, and even though she was still in high school, she was raging all over the place saying she wanted to be her daughter-in-law. In particular, the Won group was active. She originally wanted her to marry her second son over there, but she changed her mind. If the second son of the Hwan group is a lizard, then Jin-Hu Kang is a dragon. Hwang Eugene also seemed to have her heart if her opponent was Kang Jin-Hu. Wouldn't it be better if she got married right after graduation? It is only in such a place that he listens to his wife and acts as a king, but when he meets the wives of the teenage group in another place, he has to bow his head and act like a maid. Even in front of a young blue-eyed girl who had just married, she had to quiver and flatter. However, if she only gets Kang Jin-Hu as her son-in-law, she will change her position in an instant. She is the wife of SSK Group and the wife of CL Group. Wouldn't everyone bow their heads and support them? As long as Jin-Hu Kang is a man, if he sees our Eugene, he will definitely like it. The question is, how do you arrange a seat? Whether in politics or business, there are not only 2 families who are aiming for Kang Jin-Hu. It can be said that she is interested in any house with an unmarried daughter. It is said that Jin-Hu Kang grew up under her single mother. That's why they say she thinks so badly of her mother. I heard about it too. Her mother said she was stuck. Park Young-ja's eyes lit up. Right. There was such a good way. So, after the earthquake, does she have to get acquainted with her mother first? Said one woman. But isn't she still dating the white girl she brought to the party back then? Jin-Hu Kang brought her lover to her inauguration party, which has been an issue in the business world for a while. It was later revealed that she was the head of the Golden Gate legal team. It means that she is a financial resource with beauty and ability. Park Young-ja said with a smile. Is it wrong for a man to date a woman? It doesn't matter how many people you meet if you're capable. When you're young, you have to meet a lot of women and have a lot of experience so you can get married later and be faithful to your family. The women responded to her words. Oh, that's right. Ho ho, as expected, your wife knows something. Of course. Even if it's a relationship, isn't it right to marry someone in the business world? OTK company doesn't have a construction company, so it fits perfectly with Chungwon Group. Knowing that she was an uncle, it made her feel good to hear her say this. How good would she be if Kang Jin-Hu became a son-in-law? If that is the case, she even thought about incorporating Chungwon Group as an affiliate of OTK company. She said it would be her daughter's child, that she inherits the company anyway. Now let's stop talking and go practice golf. Okay, madam. At her words, everyone got up and moved. Unlike the fitness center where guests can also enter, the golf driving range is only accessible to members. Upon entering, I saw a middle-aged woman sitting in a waiting chair. Park Young-ja habitually glanced her opponent up and down. The clothes she was wearing were far from luxury or branded products. Her hairstyle and makeup were modest and her hands were rough. There was trouble on her face and she didn't seem to have spent much money on it. What is this lady? Can such a woman also have membership? There was a new female employee with a young-looking face at the golf driving range desk. When Park Young-ja tried to go inside without saying a word, the staff said, "Can you show me your membership card or ID?" "What?" Park Young-ja looked at her employee with a puzzled expression. Then the staff kindly explained, "This is for members only, so you must have a membership card to enter." "I don't have it now." "Oh, then if you tell me your membership number, I will look it up." Normally I would have just skipped over it, but today somehow I'm getting more and more angry. If I were the wife of a teenage group, would I not have recognized her? Park Young-ja suppressed his anger and said calmly, "It's been a while since the lady came in, so I don't know if she still knows, but she doesn't know anyone here. This is the first time an employee does this to me without a concept." She had something to say while the staff was embarrassed. "I'm sorry, but I have to check my membership." The anger that had barely been suppressed exploded. "Are you ignoring people now? Aren't people's words the same? Oh no. If you do not know your membership number, just tell us your name." He still had no idea what he was doing wrong. That's probably because the staff was only following the manual. What a cheeky bitch. Damn. Park Young-ja vigorously swung her hand, and the employee who was hit in the cheek was surprised and did not know what to do. She shouted as she shot her staff, "Apologize right now." The women who came with me had no intention of stopping anyone. The staff, crushed by the pressure, cried and said, "Sorry, I'm sorry." However, that did not resolve Park Young-ja's anger. Is that the attitude of apologizing now? Get down on her knees here and apologize properly. With just one word, you can cancel and overthrow everyone's membership here. If you don't want to be cut off, get down on your knees now. It's a difficult job to get into. If you don't want to grow your job anymore, you have no choice but to do what you are told. Hey, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. The moment the employee cried and was about to get down on her knees, a middle-aged woman approached and grabbed her body. It's okay. It's the same woman who was sitting in the waiting chair just before. Park Young-ja was absurd. What else is this? Interrupting. A middle-aged woman exhorted a crying employee and complained to her. What is this? If you're a guest, you're a guest, so why hit the staff? I hit him because he did something wrong. Is there any problem? Then she countered. I've been watching for a while. What did the staff do wrong? Even if there is a mistake, we should formally protest, right? Park Young-ja crossed her arms and said, "Do you know who I am?" At that, the middle-aged woman was perplexed. How do you know who you are asking this question? Who are you? The things I couldn't learn from this. What? What are you doing over there? Your family? What kind of work are you doing? The middle-aged woman suddenly answered. My son works for an OTK company, but... Then the women behind them burst into laughter. Oh, my son works for an OTK company. What great pride is that? Puha, whoever hears it will know that it will be Kang Jin-hoo. Park Young-ja looked at her staff as if she didn't want to deal with her anymore. She said, "It really can't be. Anyway, it happened because of you, so before you call the manager and have a blast, get down on her knees and apologize properly." A middle-aged woman blocked the front of her staff. Stop it. Why are you doing this? Park Young-ja looked at her middle-aged woman and said, or you get down on your knees. Then I will make it happen. Then the women who came with me laughed and agreed with me. Oh, I can do that. As an employee, of course, you have to remember and treat customers. If someone has done something wrong, they should apologize. Aren't you saying that you can't just give for your sake? A middle-aged woman is not sure what to do, but a woman in her suit walks in. What the hell is this? She was none other than the owner of this hotel, Im Sumi, the president. Everyone was surprised by her appearance. In the case of a true guest, when the boss appears, she shouts even louder. But it is also up to the boss. None of these people dared to disobey the Seosong group. Park Young-ja pretended to be friendly. Long time no see. President Lim Sumi looked around. Just by looking at the staff holding their cheeks and crying, the situation was roughly guessed. It's still uproar here and there because of Gapjul, but you're still doing this out of your mind. Chaebol belonging to the teenage group, regardless of good or bad personality, refrain from public opinion as much as possible. However, the ambiguous chaebols do not understand the atmosphere and are rude. I thought the staff didn't know what they were doing, so I was giving them some training. At the words of Park Young-ja, President Lim Soo-mi spoke with a cold voice. I train our hotel staff. Who is it that you want to educate people at will? The atmosphere subsided in an instant. It's not fair to just be slapped on the cheek by a junior staff member. Park Young-ja said with a smile. It was just a light note. The middle-aged woman said with a welcome expression. Sumi-san. When she said that, she put on a look on her face that everyone was dumbfounded. How many people in Korea can call President Im Soo-mi this way? What was surprising, however, was the attitude of CEO Im Soo-mi. She was happy and took the middle-aged woman's hand. You are here. Don't you have lunch plans later? Of course. At those words, Park Young-ja's eyes widened. Oh, do you know? Yes. After all, I don't think everyone knows. You are the representative mother of Jin-Hoo Kong. She spoke as if nothing had happened, but the repercussions of her words were enormous. People opened their mouths in surprise. In particular, Park Young-ja was so shocked that her mind went numb. If Kong Jin-Hoo is the representative. Maybe OTK company? Is this woman Jin-Hoo Kang's mother? Does she just look like a normal middle-aged woman? If you think about it, this is natural. It was only in the past few years that Kong Jin-Hoo became rich. Until then, after Kong Jin, her family was not even that of the middle class. I'm sure we'll meet like this. Even if Chungwon Group is ranked 22nd in the business world, compared to OTK Company, it is not as good as a local grocery store. If Jin-Hoo Kong only takes her heart, she could be kicked out of the business world altogether. Everyone is so anxious about not being able to see the OTK Company well, to make such a mistake. Park Young-ja quickly changed her expression and said, Oh my wife. You didn't say it before. Then she would have visited and greeted me often. Was it because her change of posture was too quick? As if a cold wind had blown her from anywhere, her mood suddenly became colder. Park Young-ja, she saw those who came with her. They suddenly stepped back. It's like trying to keep distance. As soon as he left this place, it was clear that rumors would spread throughout the business world. Wouldn't that alone lead to bullying at various gatherings? How? While she was shaking her head hard, President Lim Soo-mi called somewhere. Hello, CEO Kong Jin-Hoo. Did you ask your mother to call you right away if something happened? I think I've had some business with Chongwon Group's wife right now. Would you like to come over? At those words, Park Young-ja as well as the women with her became contemplative. After her brief conversation, she said with a smile. Right now, CEO Kong Jin-Hoo is saying that he has cancelled all his schedules and is running here right now. Without thinking any further, Park Young-ja fell to her knees in front of her Choi Mi-ja. I'm sorry, madam. I did not dare to see you and committed a disrespect. Why are you here? Park Young-ja grabbed her pants crotch and clasped her head. It's my year to kill. I was really wrong. Please forgive me just once. Choi Mi-ja said confused. No, you apologized to the staff, not me. Then she said Park Young-ja as if she had just pleaded with her staff that she had slapped her on the cheek. Sorry. Did it hurt a lot? Slap me hard on the cheek until your anger subsides. 10 days have passed since I returned to Korea. Meanwhile, Korea was groaning from the heat wave. It's not just hot, it's almost breathtaking. The Korea Meteorological Administration issued a heat wave advisory every day, warning people to refrain from outdoor activities. Sanjiop, who returned from the meeting, drank cold water and wiped the sweat from his forehead. It's hot. Why is the weather like this? Is it very hot? Don't talk. Australia is not that hot. She seems to have learned that Korea has 4 distinct seasons when she was young, but now it seems that only summer and winter remain. Even summers get hotter and winters get colder. So I don't go out and stay inside. I don't even have anything to go out. You also played games at work and I read thick books. Professor Mohan's new work, Big One After. For reference, it has been on the #1 spot on the bestsellers worldwide for several weeks. The royalties alone will be huge, but all will be donated to the earthquake victims. You asked. Is that fun? The content is good but a bit boring. Still, I am reading to the end because of the loyalty that we suffered together. I've read almost everything now. What is the conclusion? We have to protect the environment. What is the conclusion? Professor Mohan was more concerned about extreme weather caused by climate change than earthquakes. The temperature of the Earth has continued to rise for several decades, which has increased the risk of various anomalies. Heat wave, cold wave, drought, flood, typhoon, etc. Earthquakes occur independently of human actions as they are caused by energy within the Earth. However, extreme weather is the result of human actions. Therefore, it is possible to prevent and prepare according to the effort. Read more at wuxiax.com. In fact, as the years go by, the extreme weather is becoming more frequent. Not only Korea but other countries also suffer from heat waves. Dozens of people have already died from heat waves in Europe and Japan, and wildfires in the United States show no signs of extinguishing. The biggest cause of this, as we all know, is global warming. Since the Industrial Revolution, the use of fossil fuels has increased rapidly and the Earth's temperature has risen. This is the price of economic development. However, the damage caused by it is greater in developing countries than in developed countries. They have not been able to enjoy the benefits of economic development, but they are enjoying only the damage. Senior Sanjiop said while sitting on the sofa and drinking Coke. Politicians keep begging me to meet you. The ruling party or the opposition party? Both. There are also members of the Liberal People's Party. What are you doing when we meet? It's just eating and playing golf. I shook my head. Oh, then I can't see you. I can't play golf. I don't know why other politicians like golf so much. You don't play soccer or basketball. Taijayu said. You play golf well. Last time I played hole-in-one. It's an online golf game. In that way you can say that he is an all-round sportsman. Anyway, politicians are specifications. I don't think there's anything good about getting tangled up. Sanjiop Sr. nodded his head. Well, I'm not in a position to say sorry. While we were all idling together for a while, I got a phone call from Chairman Im Jin-young. I have something I want to talk to. Do you have time? Yes. It's okay. I will go there now. Less than 30 minutes after the call ended, Chairman Im Jin-young arrived at the company. What's going on? Chairman Im Jin-young said as if he had a headache. It's because of the takeover of Daewoo Shipbuilding. I saw the article. As you can see from the name alone, Daewoo Shipbuilding was a subsidiary of Daewoo Group. However, Daewoo Group went bankrupt due to insolvency. In the original case, Daewoo Shipbuilding should have collapsed at the same time, but automobiles and shipbuilding cannot be easily let down because they have a huge impact on the national economy. Therefore, it was saved by injecting public funds equals national tax. And now Korea Development Bank is the largest shareholder. In fact, it is a public company. However, since it is impossible to carry them on forever, they have been selling them for a long time, and now Seosung Heavy Industries is mentioned as a strong target. Are you really going to take over? Chairman Im Jin-young smiled bitterly. Considering our relationship with the current government, it should be. But there are some serious problems. As can be seen from the bankruptcy of Hyunjin Shipping, the current global shipping market is not doing well. And if the shipping industry is not doing well, it means that the shipbuilding industry is also not doing well. In the meantime, Daewoo Chosun was run by the president on a parachute from the political arena. All positions such as outside directors and standing advisors were filled with politicians. As a result, every time the government changed, the management changed as well. At the time of Park Si-hyung, they were politicians of the Liberal National Party, and now they are politicians of the New Politics Party. If you look at this, whether you are a conservative or a liberal, taking care of your own people is the same. Even if emergency management is insufficient, the company cannot run properly if it is run according to the taste of the government in this way. The bond maturity date is coming soon, and the repayment amount is short-lived. A rollover? Rollover means extension of maturity. I already did it once. In any case, since we have more assets than liabilities, we won't be unable to repay it. But creditors would like to give them a higher interest rate. I nodded. It seems that the public is noticing the use of additional public assets, so they are pushing for the sale again. If the business conditions are good, chaebol groups will also show interest. But it is a treasure trove of things to take now. In this situation, there was talk of pursuing a merger with Seosung Heavy Industries, led by the new political party. Sounds like a merger, but in fact it is a forced transfer. What is the market cap of Daewoo Joseon? A little less than 2 trillion. Among them, KDB has a stake of 58%. The stake sale will of course be done in a block deal. If it's forcibly handing over, won't you give me a discount? Block deals, which are block trades, are priced according to the struggle between buyers and sellers. If the buyer is dissatisfied, the price is higher than the market price, and if the seller is dissatisfied, the price is reduced on the contrary. 1 trillion won would be enough to take over. It is not the end of life. Container ships and LNG carriers have synergies with existing businesses, but they are not in the offshore plant sector. Korea was once the world's #1 shipbuilder. However, Chinese shipbuilders who have accumulated technological prowess are in great difficulty as they swept the entire world by winning low-priced orders. As a result, domestic shipbuilders turned their attention to high-value-added industries. One of them is an offshore plant. An offshore plant is a structure installed on the sea to mine resources on the seabed. In this market occupied by shipbuilders in advanced countries, Daewoo Shipbuilding and domestic shipbuilders ambitiously challenged themselves. However, it turned out to be a huge loss. The problem is that he had no experience in manufacturing and that all of his core designs depended on foreign countries, but the biggest reason is low-priced orders. When this happened, opinions were divided between those who wanted to keep pushing forward because they had accumulated know-how, and those who wanted to withdraw because they could incur a bigger loss. However, as the low oil price continued, the number of orders itself decreased, and the offshore plant sector was reduced to an emo complex. If the business conditions do not improve, the acquisition will take place and bear additional losses. Tae-jae said. Then why don't we take over? Chairman Im Jin-young shook his head. That's because the politicians are noticing it, and it's not a bad sale either. Is it the so-called adult case? No matter which government is in power, the chaebols. In particular, the Seosong Group has received various privileges. As such, the will of the politicians cannot be ignored. And as long as you're going to keep doing it, it wouldn't be a bad idea to be called big on this opportunity. Aren't you interested in shipbuilding? Apparently, I came here to ask about this. I was about to reply that I wasn't interested, but at that moment something came to my mind. As soon as Chairman Im Jin-young passed away, Taekyu asked, "What did you see this time?" "I told you what I saw before." Taekyu asked in surprise. "Is the North Sea next to England?" "Huh. The North Sea is located above the continent of Europe, to the right of England. This place became famous because an oil field was discovered in the 1960s. The extracted crude oil is high-quality light oil with low sulfur content, and it is Brent oil from North Sea, one of the world's 3 major crude oils. The North Sea oil field brought great wealth to neighboring countries. Thanks to this, Britain, Norway, and the Netherlands have risen to the ranks of oil-producing countries. But this was not necessarily a good thing. After that, the Netherlands suffered economic hardship to the extent that it was called the Dutch disease. And the same goes for other resource-rich countries. This is called the resource curse, and there are several reasons. First, resource mining has a small employment-inducing effect. In the end, only a small number of companies and a small number of talented people make a living by mining and selling resources, and the rest of the people play because there are no jobs. If the economy is not good, the value of the currency should fall and exports should increase. However, since these countries are constantly selling resources, the value of their currency goes up and down regardless of the economic downturn. Naturally, the competitiveness of the manufacturing industry is inevitably weakened. That is why countries with enormous resources suffer a great slump in manufacturing. In any case, it is fortunate that the economy runs in this way, but in an economic structure that relies only on specific resources, if prices drop sharply or are exhausted, the entire country will collapse. The Republic of Nauru and Venezuela are prime examples. Although not to this extent, Russia, Brunei, and Saudi Arabia are also suffering from the drop in oil prices. Of course, not all countries with resources fall under this curse, and there are, in rare cases, countries that have escaped the curse. The United States produces huge amounts of shale oil and shale gas, along with numerous other resources, but it accounts for insignificant amounts of the total U.S. economy. And since all of the resources produced can be consumed domestically, there is no reason to be subject to the resource curse. When the economy becomes as large as the United States in the first place, the general theory is bound to go beyond that. And Britain, the Netherlands, and Norway, which have oil fields in the North Sea, were able to overcome them thanks to their efforts such as creating a sovereign wealth fund with the money they sold oil and gas and nurturing high value-added industries. These countries are characterized by having a democratic decision-making system that can rationally distribute the profits from resources. Because of this, they can rather grow using resources as a foothold. Countries that do not do so suffer from severe conflicts or, in extreme cases, civil wars over resource ownership. In a way, the reason Korea's manufacturing industry was able to grow like this was probably because of the lack of resources. I looked up related videos with Taekyu. The moment the hurricane hit, the house and garage were shattered and soared into the sky. The site that had been swept away was completely ruined. Taeyong opened his mouth wide. The scale of the typhoon is different in Cheonjoguk. Typhoon, hurricane, cyclone. Although the names are different depending on the region where they occur, they are all the same tropical cyclones. Around this time each year, the United States suffers from the threat of hurricanes. When you see a hurricane or tornado swept by in the United States, it is beyond imagination. The most famous hurricane was Katrina, which struck New Orleans in 2005. The hurricane that hit the southern United States submerged the entire city, killed nearly 2,000 and displaced more than 50,000. Hasn't there been such a huge hurricane that has ever made landfall in Europe? Hurricanes usually sweep through the southern United States. However, it is not uncommon to move toward Europe according to the direction of the wind. Professor Mohan's book had something like this. The Big One is the largest earthquake in the 21st and 20th centuries. Naturally, this has had a huge impact on the environment and ecosystem. Professor Mohan argued that changes in the topography of the seabed and geothermal heat should be closely monitored, as it is not known what the consequences will be. He may have been a heretic in the academic world before, but now that he has become an authority, his opinions were immediately accepted and the budget and manpower were executed. Just as the flap of a butterfly's wings in Brazil can become a tornado hitting the United States, given the circumstances, there is no law that prevents a hurricane from hitting the North Sea oil field. Aside from these reasons, the most important thing is that foreknowledge was shown. When is that hurricane coming? Now we have to find out. Typhoons and hurricanes are named in order from a pre-established list. So if you know the name, you can predict when it will come. What happens when a hurricane hits the North Sea oil field? Aren't oil prices going to go up? A few years ago, when a hurricane swept the Gulf Coast, oil prices soared as the region's oil and natural gas production fell by more than 30%. If this hurricane destroys the North Sea oil field, oil prices will continue for quite some time. Then will the offshore plant be in the spotlight again? As our investment is large, we cannot afford it in most markets, but it is a different story in the oil market. Another great opportunity to earn money. Shall we take this opportunity to get a share for free? I contacted Chairman Im Jin-young. The OTK company will also invest money in the acquisition of Daewoo Shipbuilding. He was taken aback by my words. Is that true? We will take over half of the stake in Korea Development Bank, and we will hand over the management rights to the Seosung Group. After negotiations, the sale price of Daewoo Shipbuilding was set at a 20% discount from the closing price. As the contract was signed in advance, OTK company took over half of the stake in Korea Development Bank, and this stake was converted into shares of Seosung Heavy Industries after the merger between Daewoo Shipbuilding and Seosung Heavy Industries. OTK company became the second largest shareholder of Seosung Heavy Industries, and Seosung Heavy Industries took the management rights. When the contract was signed, Korea Development Bank announced that it had succeeded in recovering 970 billion won of public funds. As the days passed, the heat wave got worse and worse. As this is not just a case of Korea, the death toll has been increasing in Europe, and mass deaths of fish have also occurred. In California, wildfires have been burning without being caught for over a week, threatening residential areas. Sanjiop Sr. said. As instructed, I placed bets on crude oil futures, spot and related stocks. Well done. But are oil prices really going up? Otherwise, you will lose hundreds of millions of dollars. I made a lot of money by selling cryptocurrency anyway, so it doesn't matter if I lose a little. Of course, even if I say this, I have no intention of losing anything, just like me and Sanjiop Sr. Wait. From what Professor Mohan said, there is a high possibility of extreme weather events due to abnormal high-temperature phenomena and changes in topography and geothermal heat caused by the Big One. Hurricane Red K occurred in the east of the North Atlantic Ocean and moved toward northern Europe. Meteorologists all predicted that the hurricane would dissipate as it moved through the North Atlantic Ocean. But what is this? Rather, Red K devoured other low pressures in the vicinity and grew in size. The speed of movement also increased, and the wind speed reached 300 kilometers per hour. Realizing that the situation was awakened, the England Meteorological Agency hastily issued a supreme advisory. Ships and planes were banned from sailing and some schools were closed. Fortunately or unfortunately, the hurricane moved away from Ireland and the mainland of England, and there were no feared casualties. However, the North Sea oil field plant is damaged in the aftermath of the hurricane. North Sea oil spill. Concerned about damage to neighboring countries. British Oil and Gas Agency closes some oil fields. The Norwegian government, after reviewing the damage situation, oil prices, which had been shaken by concerns about production disruptions due to the hurricane, reacted immediately as soon as the news spread. On the New York Mercantile Exchange, West Texas Intermediate (WTI) rose 22% from the previous day to $92.61 a barrel, and on the London IC Futures Exchange, Brent crude futures soared to $112.67 a barrel. Subsea oil field mining has begun to stretch again due to facility damage in the North Sea oil field and skyrocketing oil prices. Inquiries about offshore plants as well as LNG ships continued. Chairman Im Jin-yong immediately flew to England to find out the exact situation. The amount of money earned by betting on crude oil and related stocks was several times more than the amount of the stake acquisition. Meteorologists have been belatedly chasing after the extreme heat caused by global warming if it is an anomaly that swept over the northern hemisphere. Aviation and shipping stocks fell due to the surge in oil prices, while shipbuilding and heavy industry stocks, which are expected to benefit, rose at the same time. When this happened, some civic groups criticized it, saying that it caused a loss to the country by selling Daewoo Shipbuilding at a low price, preferential treatment to Seosong Group and OTK Company, but the bus had already left. If you know it that well, you criticize it before you sell it. The country that has been hit the hardest is the UK. As the North Sea oil field collapsed and crude oil spilled while the Brexit negotiations were already struggling, the British financial market slumped again. The stock price of Royal Dutch Shell, Europe's largest oil company, fell sharply on the prospect that it would take more than half a year to recover from the damage. The British were outraged when OTK Company again swept the money in a situation where most financial companies and investors suffered losses. How many times has this bastard robbed England? Strictly speaking, Jean Hu Kong did not cause a hurricane, and the amount of direct investment in the UK was small, but there was nothing that happened to him during Brexit. A mansion in Buckinghamshire near London. The beautiful blonde woman accepted the data. It contained the flow of OTK Company's funds in the international financial market. She reviewed it and her eyes lit up. 1 or 2 times may be a coincidence, but the fact that the same thing happens over and over again is not explained by the word coincidence. She remembered a man with whom she had a brief conversation in New York. On the surface he is just an ordinary Asian young man, but... Grace Rothschild mumbled. Are there really people in the world who are chosen by fate? Hurricane Red K rapidly weakened and disappeared as it moved north through the North Sea. Fortunately, there were no casualties except for a few people injured, but it left a huge amount of property damage. Damage to drilling facilities in the North Sea was also a problem, but oil spills were a bigger problem. Even today, oil continued to leak through the damaged pipe. Those who saw the oil slick filling the ocean recalled the 2010 rig Deepwater Horizon explosion. As a result, a whopping 770 million liters of crude oil spilled into the Gulf of Mexico, and it took several months to recover and prevent disasters. It is not comparable to that time, but it was the worst oil spill accident in Europe. Royal Dutch Shell officials who operate the drilling facilities blamed the government for its inability to forecast the weather properly, and the government blamed the poor management of the company. Until the hurricane hit Europe, investment experts and funds were predicting a fall in oil prices. But when oil prices soared in the aftermath of the North Sea oil field damage, everyone was stunned. In this situation, when it became known that OTK Company had already signed a lot of contracts for spot and futures, people were shocked. Did you know that the North Sea oil field would be destroyed? Could it have been that you were grasping the hurricane's path? Does that make sense? Even meteorologists called me didn't know. Could it be that you developed an artificial intelligence that predicts the weather? If you had known, shouldn't you have warned me in advance like in Big One? I bet on US sanctions against Iran and OPEC production cuts, but I guess I got caught. I'm tired of luck. It seems like you've been blessed with luck. Please tell me the lottery winning number. Most thought it was a coincidence, but some took it seriously. They carefully reviewed the investment cases of OTK company not only this time, but also in the past. As fishes were killed and fishing was halted due to the oil spill, environmental groups across Europe staged protests. To protect the sea, all North Sea oil fields should be closed immediately and the EU should ban submarine oil mining. Who would say no to protecting the environment? I agree with the purpose, but the problem is that there is no alternative. Environmental groups insist on switching to eco-friendly energy such as solar power or wind power, but there is a limit to the amount of electricity that can be produced through it. Strictly speaking, it's not completely eco-friendly either. Taekyu crossed his arms and said, human civilization won't work without oil anyway. That's right. With this in mind, oil, along with gold, must have become the king of the real world. Sanjiop Sr. watched the situation instead of liquidating his position. She looked at multiple monitors and talked non-stop here and there. Now, international speculative capital is moving. The price of oil is going to be much higher than it is now. Just as water flows from high to low, money flows from low to high. As concerns grew that supply and demand would not improve for a while, speculative capital began to buy crude oil, and WTI also crossed the psychological margin of $100 per barrel. The rise in oil prices has pushed up prices again. Not only the shopping cart prices, but also gasoline prices at gas stations soared. The real thing moves finance and finance moves the real thing. Oil-producing countries, including OPEC members, cheered the unexpected good news. A Saudi Arabian royal family apologized for strong protests from Britain and Norway after saying that the damage to the North Sea oil field was in Allah's favor. Just like the saying goes that there is no good or evil in money, in front of money, the misfortunes of others are often considered ridiculous. I also have nothing to say. I am the person who benefited the most from this incident. This is because the path and speed of the hurricane were completely different from the government's expectations. Had I known just a few days earlier, I would have had enough time to prepare. Could it have been prevented if I had been alerted? But I knew the drilling facility would be damaged, but I didn't know the oil would leak. I sighed as I looked at the belt of oil that covered the North Sea. I'll pay some money for the restoration. When I opened my eyes, Ellie was sleeping next to me, covered with a blanket. It looks like he fell asleep deeply because of accumulated fatigue for several days. I looked at the clock and it was 2 a.m. It was still dark outside. I got out of the bedroom and went down to the first floor. Then he took out a can of beer and went out into the garden. A soft light shone on the uninhabited garden. The heat continued through the night. A tropical night seemed to cover the entire city. Sweat dripped down his forehead even after he left for a while. I sat alone at the table and drank beer. The surroundings were quiet. For a moment, the only sound was the sound of a car passing by in the distance. At that moment, a voice came from behind. What are you doing alone? I can't sleep, so I'm drinking beer. When I turned my head, Taekyu was out. Let's drink together. Taekyu went back, grabbed a beer and sat down next to him. In the past, I used to sit on a convenience store umbrella and drink beer, but now I can't even do that because my face is sold. I recalled that time and said, when I first invested, I didn't know that I would come this far. In a capitalist society, money is power. The more money you have, the stronger your power will naturally grow. Eventually, the size of your assets has grown to the level of a large corporation, and you have gained global fame, notoriety. Taeyong nodded his head. I was making too much money. There is also a forecast that the value of Karis will reach $1 trillion when the era of full-fledged self-driving cars begins. As such, the market size and corporate value are rapidly growing. Besides that, the porn business and the pizza business are doing well. There are plenty of places in the world that have more capital than we do. Pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, private equity funds, investment banks, financial companies, etc., with more than hundreds of trillions of funds under management. Even so, it has now reached a level that cannot be ignored. The global financial market is like a vast ocean. Having a lot of money is just having a big, nice boat. A person who brags about riding a bigger boat on a river is just one of many when it comes to sea. Taekyu heard me and said, still, a carrier is better than a raft. It is not. The bigger the boat, the less likely it will sink. However, large ships are difficult to handle. Like the Titanic, it can sink because it finds the iceberg in front of it and fails to avoid it, or it can sink after being hit by a torpedo shot from a coastal artillery or other ship. Who would have imagined that the historic big investment banks like Barings and Lehman Brothers would go bankrupt? Just as the sea has swallowed many ships, so too has the market swallowed many companies and money. No matter which company rises or goes bankrupt, and whoever loses or makes money, the market will continue to exist like the sea. I said, looking at Taeyong. What are we going to do later? Well, what island are you fishing on? Do you know how to fish? Then, I did it in the game. If you think about it, not much has changed when you have a lot of money or when you have little money. If there is a difference, did you go from an otaku without money to an otaku with money? I remembered something I heard from Warren Buffett a long time ago. I said you should think about why you make money. Do you really need a reason to make money? We gathered at Hyunju's sister's house to have dinner together. I told her mother too, but she said she couldn't come because she had a golf appointment. These days she says she is learning golf from President Lim Soo-mi, and she seems to have had some fun. The house that Taekyu gave as a gift was not as flashy as the penthouse in Manhattan, but it was clean and cozy. There is a garden, so it would be nice for the kids to run around later. Henry is blunt about what's so good. When I first saw him he looked like a nobleman or a financial elite, but now he just looks like an 8-year-old. Was he this way in the first place, or did he become like this because he got along with us? Anyway, it looks a lot better now. It's best for people to be happy. Come on. Hyunju Nuna was very full. The baby in the womb is growing up healthy and well, but in case of any unforeseen circumstances, medical personnel are resident at home and at work. Hyunju Nuna said she would lie down for a while, and I asked Henry while she entered the room. I have a question for you. What? I asked Henry. Do you know about the Rothschilds? He nodded his head as if it was natural. Of course. Does anyone know that? Not about what everyone knows, but about reality. Henry put on a puzzled expression. Why are you asking that all of a sudden? I was curious about Jewish capital. Golden Gate was founded by German Jew Erich Goldman. Initially it started as a family run by a Jewish family. As you can see, we inherited the family business according to our abilities, whether it was direct or collateral. I was not married to a Jew, and now I have nothing to do with Jewish capital. In fact, even the executives alone are a mixture of different races, and each branch is guaranteed independent management to some extent. But of course the Rothschilds are driven by the Jews. I told you what happened in New York. I met a woman named Grace Rothschild at J.P. Morgan headquarters. Accidentally. Perhaps it will. It was completely unplanned that I went there. Rothschild and J.P. Morgan have a close relationship. There will also be quite a few shares held through the foundation or borrowed name. This too is already known. I heard that the Rothschild family is worth $50 trillion. Henry burst out laughing as if it was ridiculous. That's more than the annual GDP of the United States. You don't believe that, do you? Taekyu, who heard the story, looked shocked. Wow. They're the masterminds of all conspiracy theories, and they're worth less than $50 trillion. Read more at wuxiax.com. Yeah, did you believe that? As the world is paying attention to OTK companies, it is natural that they will also be interested. Because of the money I have? Henry nodded his head. Money is money, but there is also the fact that you are young. Capital combined with time has enormous power as long as it can continue to earn returns above the market rate. Even if your assets grow by 10% each year, they will double in about 7 years. 4 times in 14 years, 8 times in 21 years. If the rate of return is higher than that, the period will be even shorter. That's when you didn't lose a single loss in the middle. If you pursue only the market average return, you do not need to take a big risk. But if you pursue more than the market average return, risk is inevitable. 10% a year is a return that anyone with even a little bit of investment can earn. But how many people can make such a profit every year without failure? And the bigger the capital, the lower the rate of return. Making 1 million won into 10 million won and making 10 billion won into 100 billion won is a completely different story. Isn't such a person real? Warren Buffett. The grandfather made an astonishing 20% annual return for decades. And Berkshire Cashier, a small textile company, has grown into a giant with a market capitalization of over $600 billion. The important thing is that people think so, whether Jinhu can actually do that or not. Anyway, given the foresight, it won't be impossible. If I'm worth $150 billion now, will I have more than $1 trillion in 20 years? It is said that the Saud royal family or the Abu Dhabi royal family have more wealth than that, but that is a family and I am an individual. No one in history has made that much money in such a short period of time as Jinhu. That's something that even John Davidson Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie couldn't do. John Davidson Rockefeller is the oil king of Standard Oil, and Andrew Carnegie is the steel king of Carnegie Steel. Both of them had assets of hundreds of billions of dollars in today's money, in their heyday, and the companies they created remain as ExxonMobil and U.S. Steel, playing a pivotal role in the U.S. economy. The more money is collected, the more power it has in itself. Considering that they are a prestigious family, the assets of that family are the foundation. How many families can survive only with honor? How much is your fortune? I do not know. It won't come close to $50 trillion, but it's still going to be $1 or $2 trillion. Maybe more. For the Rothschilds, the family handles money management and internal affairs exclusively with family and relatives. For this reason, the exact assets and management methods were hardly known to the outside world. It seems that what you see is not everything. As the saying goes, people's perception does not go beyond the scope of their knowledge. Perhaps the financial market I have encountered so far is only a small part of the whole?